Now let's dig deeper into those better than expected U.S. consumer confidence figures. We are joined today by Lynn Franco, the director of the Conference Board Consumer Research Center, who publishes this report. Lynn, thanks you for joining us today. Now, one of the reasons why we saw consumer confidence jump up in September is because consumers are feeling generally more optimistic about the job prospects. Why are they feeling more upbeat right now?
I think both, business conditions are improving just slightly, very moderately. Even though we're adding jobs at a slow pace, we're still adding. So I think overall there's some very positive news out there, not necessarily enough to really boost confidence levels, but at least to sort of maintain it and keep consumers with some cautious optimism.
Now, you mentioned that business sentiment was up. Does that bode well for the idea that perhaps we will see growth in the third quarter of this year bounce back after we saw a bit of it stalling in the second quarter?
A very slight bounce back is what we're going to see. I mean, still historically, we're at very weak confidence levels, and we're sort of, gained back some of the ground that we had lost earlier this year. So it's sort of been a choppy ride, and we expect more of that going forward.
And going forward, of course, we've got the holiday season coming up, which is the biggest shopping season of the year. The fact that the consumer is feeling more confident right now, does that bode well for retail sales in the months to follow?
Well, it does, and especially the fact that they're more optimistic about their income expectations. So if this manages to hold through October and November, then I think retailers can expect at least as good a season as last year, if not perhaps a little bit better.
And the fact that we've seen a nice rebound in the stock market and also indications that the housing market is starting to stabilize. Today we saw that home prices rose quite nicely, and that trend has been continuing. How much is that playing into how consumers are feeling about the economy going forward?
Well, I think the real key here is the rebound that we're seeing in the housing market that now finally seems sustainable, and I think that's going to help boost confidence as well. So it's going to go, the way housing goes and the way employment goes, and so far we've seen some good positive signals.
And it seems the housing market is outperforming the broader economy. Why is it that the housing is such a big impact in terms of how consumers feel about spending? Is it because so much of their equity is in their homes, or what's the reason for that?
Well, exactly. So much equity is in their home. A lot more of sort of dollar value increases in housing translate immediately into spending. So if we see prices continue to go up, that translates into greater spending and hopefully greater growth down the road.
Now, I like to keep it positive, but of course, there are some headwinds, notably the fiscal cliff. We've been talking a lot about that, and higher gas prices. How concerned should we be about that?
Well, I think if we see an uptick in gas prices, that tends to bring down consumer expectations, and obviously those folks on a tight budget are impacted much more greatly. In terms of the fiscal cliff, that's sort of looming there. I don't think consumers are quite confronting that. That has the potential also to dampen consumer spirits down the road.
And lastly, I have to ask you, we're heading into a presidential election. This number, does this bode well for Obama's re-election prospects?
Well, traditionally what we've seen is a figure of 100 or greater. The party in office tends to stay in office. However, confidence this time around has not behaved traditionally following other recessions. So again, I think there's still a lot of indecision out there.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much, Lynn Franco, for joining us today.